When I was a little girl, one of my favorite things was to go on the merry-go-round. I love the merry-go-round. It was so beautiful, and it was so much fun, and you were sort of in the groove, and you were riding, and everything. The horses were just magnificent, and the ride was just incredibly special, and I just loved that moment. Not too long ago, well, I guess a few years ago, my niece took her to a carnival, and she wanted to ride on the merry-go-round. It was the same merry-go-round that I used to ride on when I was younger. It was at the state fair. And I looked at this merry-go-round, and it was like, oh, it's so dirty. The horses are chipped, and it's sort of like long lines, and it was just, it's just into my adult judgment. And I got on the thing, and it's like it took forever to get started, and I thought the ride was way too short, it didn't go on long enough, and this and that, whatever, and we got off, and my niece said, I want to go again. I said, okay. So we stood in line again, and whatnot, and then I gotta stop this, okay? I enjoyed this so much when I was a child, when I was her age. And I'm not enjoying it now. Because I'm looking at this with critical eyes, with judgment, with all the wrong attitude. And I said, I have to change this. And so in that moment, I decided to change it. I said, I'm going to enjoy this ride once again. So when we got on again, I just pretended that I was young again and looked at it through, young eyes. And it was fun, and we laughed, and we were, just having a great time with the ride. And it seemed to be plenty long, and we got off. And my niece says, oh, I like the second ride a lot better. And I said, why is that? Just because we laughed. And we had fun. And the point of this is that when we move into the moment and enjoy whatever it is we are doing, when we bring that essence of ourselves into the moment, we connect. That is when we connect. And the theme of my message today is about connection. Because when we truly want to access, the power of God and have it move in our lives in special ways, we have to be able to connect with it. And connecting means that we have to move into the moment, into the present moment. So rather than looking at things with the critical eye and with judgment, can we step into life and say, let me connect with the life, with the process that's underneath it. As Deb was saying in her meditation, it's not about getting from one point to another. It's about that journey, experiencing it in the moment and connecting with it. That is the power. There's joy and love and just an incredible, wonderful feeling when we're able to do that. There's a spiritual practice of actually being present with whatever we are doing. Now you can begin to observe yourself and say, am I present? But I want you to really embrace this. In mystical studies, in mystical practices, we teach this spiritual practice, which is, no matter what you are doing, be present with it. So if you are making a meal, be very present with it. In other words, observe the apple as you peel it or as you cut it. Observe every aspect of what you are doing and put in your life force into what you are doing. Know that God is present in every moment. The more you become present with what you are doing, you will find it will take on an incredible quality of mysticism. It's a discipline that is sometimes hard to cultivate, but if we can do that, be in the moment, no matter what we are doing. How often when you are cooking a meal are you thinking about everything else? Okay? Moving into the moment means you are letting go of the past, all your past attachments. You're letting go of your worries about the future, and you are right here, right now. to be in this moment right here, right now. Feel the chair that you are sitting on. Feel the energy of the person that may be sitting next to you or in front of you or behind you. Observe, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about something that's going to happen later? Are you thinking about something that's happened before? Can you be really in the moment? The next time you take a shower, be in the moment. Experience every drop of water as it touches the body. And feel it. And know that you are in the presence of God and of life. It's a powerful, mystical process to be present. And too often we are not. It's estimated that we probably spend the majority of our life in unconscious thinking and thoughts and saying and thinking the same things over and over and over again. So wake up, right? Become present in this moment. Because when you come into the moment, then you can surrender to life. That word, surrender. We all fear, I don't want to surrender, I want to control, I want to hang on. But surrender is surrendering to the moment, becoming very present. It's letting go of the past tense. It's letting go of planning and worrying about the future. And it's allowing yourself to be in the moment and surrendering to God. It's an inner process. Surrender doesn't mean, if you're just stuck in the mud, it doesn't mean resignation. Well, I'm resigned to be stuck in the mud for the rest of my life. No, you're going to take some action to get out of the mud. No matter what is going on in your life, you're going to take some action. However, when you surrender, it's an inner aspect of it. You're saying, I'm surrendering to God to allow God to move into my life, to become fully present in the moment so that I can listen and be with God and be guided and moved along our way. There's no judgment when you're in the moment. There's no judgment. There's no resistance. There's no emotional negativity. There's just a turning to God. A turning to God. Eckhart Tolle says, he's written several books, but it says to surrender is giving up the future and giving up the past. Allowing ourselves to come into the now, into the present. You focus not on the 100 things that you will do or may have to do at some future time. You focus on the one thing that you can do now. And if you choose to enjoy that moment, it becomes magical. The negativity is gone, and you just surrender to God. Now, surrendering to God, of course, requires faith. Because generally the reason why we want to control everything, plan the future, hang on to the past, make sure that we do this, we want to control it. Right? We want to be in control of our lives. And in so doing, we discount that incredible power that is within us that can work with us and work for us. So it requires faith. It requires faith to let go. And sometimes we might say, well, I don't have big faith. I've got small. I don't care if you have small faith or if you have big faith. The important thing is that you begin to embrace it and sometimes begin to act as if you have faith. What would you do if you had faith? And know that God is with you and God is moving with you in your life. There's a story about a little boy who went to a town meeting. And he's well renowned for that town meeting because actually the minister had called all the people of the community come together because they had a huge drought in their community. And they were just quite upset and they didn't know how they were going to survive this drought. So the minister said, let's all come together, bring any kind of prayer aspect that you want. Bring those things that will enable you to get into faith. So some of the people brought their Bibles, and others brought crosses, and others brought their prayer manuals, and people brought all those kinds of things, and they came together, and they were praying, and they were praying, and they were praying, and there was no rain. And then a little boy showed up, and he walked in, and all of a sudden, they heard some thunder, and all of a sudden it started to rain. And they looked at the little boy, and they understood. Because what he brought was an umbrella. Expect it and know it and have faith. He had faith that God was going to bring the rain, and so he brought his umbrella. See, when we have that faith, then things begin to move in us and open us up to incredible things. Our part is to have faith. Our part is to do what we do. Okay? But we have to surrender to that power, surrender to life, and enjoy what is in the moment. It's really important because when we become really present in that moment, we connect. The little boy connected. Oh, we're praying for rain. It's going to rain. I have that faith. And so he brought his umbrella. How often do we step into our faith in that way? One of my favorite stories is about a night. It was back in the 1960s. It was really late at night. It was like 11:30, something like that. And there was an older African-American woman who was standing on the side of an Alabama highway trying to endure an incredible rainstorm. Now, this is the 1960s, Alabama, racial tensions, all kinds of things and whatever, and her car broke down and she needed a ride. She said, she had to hail the very first car that came along. She started to hail the car. And it happened to be a young white man. Now, virtually unheard of during this time would be a young white man stopping to assist an elderly African-American woman. But he did. He stopped. He was in the moment, and they connected. And he helped her. He gave her shelter from the rain, and he took her to a spot where she could call and get her car towed, and then he put her in a taxi, and she seemed to be in a great hurry to get somewhere. But she had time enough to say, give me your name and your address, and she took his name and address, and she thanked him, and then he took off, and he went, and she went on to do her business. A moment of connection in Alabama that transcended all of the racial tensions of that state at that time. Well, the woman raced on to the hospital where she was able to be with her husband before he finally made his transition. So she had some last final moments with him. She was so appreciative. Well, 7 days later, this young man who had assisted her received a knock on the door, and there was this incredible gift. It was a huge TV color console. Now, in the 1960s, that would have been an extremely expensive gift. And he was absolutely shocked. And there was a special note attached, and it read, "Thank you so much for assisting me on the highway the other night. The rain drenched not only my clothes, but also my spirits. Then you came along. Because of you, I was able to make it to my dying husband's bedside just before he passed away. God bless you for helping me and selfishly helping others. Sincerely, Mrs. Nat King Cole." Be connected. That moment of connection is so powerful because when people connect, it transcends all that's going on, all the negativity, the judgment. Okay, it's my experience with my niece, and that letting that go and moving into the moment, you experience something special. You experience something divine. When we can do that, when we let go of all of the others the attachments, perhaps the concerns, the worries, oh my God, do I stop, do I not? There wasn't any hesitation, it was just this connection. There's so many opportunities for us to be present. Infinite opportunities for us to be present in the moment and be there with one another, for one another. But are we present? How often are we thinking about everything else? This and that and so on and so forth, and oh, this happened, and you're still holding on to something that happened, I don't know, half hour ago, an hour ago, 2 hours ago, 2 years ago, 20 years ago. We hang on to those things, and that keeps us from being in the moment. Or we worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, or the next day, or the next 10 minutes. Or what am I going to do? What plans when I leave church? I left my umbrella in the car. So what happens is we move into the moment. That's when we can really connect, to sort of surrender to the moment and make that powerful connection. It's during that time that we have opportunity for kindness, for love, for compassion. Another story for you. The year is 1917. It's the beautiful landscapes, snowy landscapes of Europe, but it's blackened by war. The trenches on one side hold the Germans, and on the other side of the trenches, filled with Americans. It's World War I. There's this exchange of gunshots going back and forth. It's quite an intense war. And separating these two armies is this long trench, and it's filled with barbed wire. And they called it no man's land because you just couldn't cross it. So I mean, this kept the armies apart, and there was, like I said, on this barbed wire, it was this not a good place. Well, there was this young German who decided that he was going to be brave and try to cross over into the American trenches, and he got shot, and he fell into this barbed wire, and he was hurt, and he started to scream with pain. He was screaming and screaming and screaming. When you get shot and you have that pain, plus he couldn't extricate himself from the barbed wire, and he was just absolutely in terrible pain. There was an American soldier who said, I can't do this anymore. And he put down his gun, and he started to crawl on his belly to the German soldier. And as soon as the Americans started to crawl out and move towards that barbed wire and that no man's land, so to speak, all the Americans then started to cease fire and watch their comrade go forth. And the Germans kept firing until all of a sudden, this German general, very high up in his army, noticed what the American was doing, and he called a ceasefire for the Germans. And all of a sudden, the American soldier went to the German soldier. He extricated him from the barbed wire. It took him a while as everyone stood and waited and watched. He extricated him from the barbed wire. He finally got him loose. He picked him up, and he walked him over to his German comrades and gave him to them. Then he started to walk back, and the German general grabbed him and spun him around, looked at him, didn't say a word. But the German general had this special Medal of Bravery, one of the highest in the German army, and he ripped it off his uniform and he put it on the man. Then the American went back to the American trenches. As soon as he was safely back, the war. But there was a moment. It's a story, 1917, true or not. I expect there's some incredible truth to it, and it's lasted over almost 100 years. Why? Because it speaks about connection. It speaks about a time when, in the moment, it wasn't about all the negativity. It wasn't about the past or the future. It wasn't about what was going on here. It was about connection. When we connect with one another, when we connect with the moment, when we connect with Spirit, when we surrender to that moment, to God within, amazing things happen. And we live life in a new and powerful and exciting way. And we experience joy, and we experience something that goes way beyond what we could possibly imagine. We allow ourselves to be in the moment and to connect. Those two soldiers also transcended their roles. Just as the young man and the African woman transcended their roles. You see, when we move into the present moment, the role that we are playing, who we are, what we are expected to do, and all this kind of things. Remember, our roles are all about what the way you've been in the past and how you're expected to be in the future. In the moment, roles can somehow disappear, and we can be present to whatever is. So we can let go of those roles, and we can have courage to stand up and be true to ourselves. And we step out of the humanness that we're in and step into our spirituality. And we connect with God and God and other people. You know, when we hear about moments of crisis, it's so often that in moments of crisis people do incredible things. And they help one another and they save one another. Think about any major crisis that has taken place where people become heroes to do things to help one another. Why? Because in crisis you become fully present in the moment. You can be thinking about 1,000 things, but if all of a sudden a bomb goes off in the next room, I guarantee you I'll be present. Fully, totally, completely present in the moment, and that's what happens in crisis. You become very aware of what's going on. You are not thinking about your laundry. You are not thinking about going to the grocery store. You are in the moment. And that is why we have so many heroes in the moment, because we are present. And in the moment, all of those expectations and rules and regulations seem to disappear. And you are there to help one another. And people move into being heroes for one another because they connect. So if we can be present all of the time, if we can be present in here and know what is in front of us, we can be called to do what we can do for one another. We won't miss it. We won't miss those opportunities that we so often miss because we're thinking about all those other things. We're not in the moment. Just one final little story. It was something that I read. It was on the internet. And I was so awed by the story that was on the internet. It was about two young twin girls that were born, and they were born premature. One of the little girls was very, very strong. And they had high hopes that, they were quite certain that she was going to live. But the other was weak, and they weren't sure that she was going to make it. In fact, they were thinking that she probably was. So here's a nurse, who's on board, and they had very strict rules at that time. When two little babies are born like that, they put them in their own incubators, and they keep them separate. And she said, "There's no connection here." She said, "These babies need to be together." So she broke a rule, and she put the little weaker sister into the incubator with her other sister, the stronger sister. And she said, in the article she talked about this, she said, witnessed something amazing. The stronger sister put her arm over the weaker sister. She said it was almost like an endearing embrace. And shortly thereafter, the heart rate of the weaker sister started to improve. The blood pressure started to rise. And within a very short period of time, they had very high hopes that this weaker sister would live as well. Nothing changed other than there was a connection. when we connect and surrender in that moment to whatever it may be, we become fully present. We will find opportunities to connect even more with other people, with other things. And in that moment, incredible joy can come forth. As we connect, incredible joy, incredible love. And that's where miracles begin to happen. That's where heroes step up. So my invitation to you this week is to truly become present, to surrender, to give up your past, to give up your future, to be in the moment, and practice being in the moment. And what happens when you're in the moment? What exciting new thing happens when you become fully present? Expect miracles. I will miss you all immensely during the next 2 months. And I'm very excited that you are in the best hands possible. Our Chris, who is here today. And so I know that you are going to be just fine. And I'm going to be just fine. And I just want you to know I'll be thinking of you, and that I love you, and I bless you, and I know that as you step into the moment,